Joining us now to talk about that and much more is the former head coach, Steve Cleveland, friend of the program on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Coach, great to have you back with us. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, guys. Thank you.
What was your immediate reaction to the news of Nick Emery's official reinstatement with the caveat that he'll miss the first 9 games?
Well, I think we all knew that there were going to be some penalties, and the process takes time. I've kind of lived through this. When I was at Fresno State, I went through this for 2 or 3 years, and I know kind of how the NC2A works, and I have a pretty good sense and a feel for how these things kind of play out just because I lived through it. And so I knew it was coming. I think he did too, and I think it's fair, equitable, and you go forward. And I think that, I heard you talking a little bit about leadership, and I believe that Nick, in a very different way, will become a significant leader of this team. I think that early on in this process, he's obviously going to have a presence on the floor as a player and as an athlete and a competitor. But I think there's been some lessons learned here. I haven't talked to Nick. I follow him like you do and read some of the articles and some of the things that he shared. And he has a perspective that's different than he had before, and I think he's learned some lessons. And most of all, I just like his attitude and his mindset right now from what I'm hearing. Obviously, until you get back and get with your teammates, but he's going to be embraced by his coaching staff and the teammates. I think he's going to bring a significant amount of leadership.
And 9 is a significant amount of games in terms of how many he's missing in the non-conference. In the regular season, it's a little under a third of the regular season. How do you think that will impact the development of this team since Nick won't play in those first 9?
Well, I think that they'll be together all summer. They'll be there throughout practice. I think what you do is you look at this as an opportunity to, maybe Ryland Bergerson or whomever. You're going to give some other people opportunities to develop early on in the season. And then as Nick gets ready and he's prepared and he's in tune with the guys, especially with some of the new guys he hasn't played with, I think it just becomes a bonus. Hey, you'd rather not have him miss games. We get that and understand that, but at the end of the day, that's what the consequences were for the actions. And so you move forward and you don't focus on that. At the end of the day, I think the narrative will be there. But for Nick, he just needs to focus on being the best player he can be and the best person he can be and the best leader that he can be. I think it'll give others opportunities to develop. The coaching staff will find other people that maybe if Nick didn't have this going on, wouldn't develop. So you look at it as an opportunity to have others develop, give you more depth, and then when Nick comes back, he will have a significant role. And the coaching staff will handle that well. They'll get a sense and a feel for that, and most importantly, making sure that he has that confidence that he had before.
Follow him at Coach Cleve 22, Steve Cleveland, former head basketball coach at BYU and Fresno State, with us on BYU Sports Nation. With Nick missing those first 9 games, how much do you feel like that immediately impacts BYU's chances at making a run to the NCAA tournament for the first time after missing 3 consecutive seasons?
Well, you're losing Elijah Bryant is obviously a significant loss. There's a young man that was 20 a night and 8 or 9 rebounds and assists, and he's hard to replace. Do I believe that Nick can replace him in that sense? Yeah, I do. I think statistically that Nick can do a lot of those same things, and has great range. I think he can fill that void. But it is going to be more difficult. I mean, they've upgraded the schedule. I haven't seen the final release schedule. I don't know if that's out yet. I've seen a lot of the games that they've picked up, and certainly the schedule is more difficult. But I think what happens is that regardless of what happens in this preseason, and I think we will see some development by younger players, and they'll have opportunities. But I think more than anything is that they're playing those teams. They're going to be more prepared for conference play. I felt all along that the WCC this year will be a better league. It'll have more depth. Certainly, we know how good Gonzaga is going to be, but St. Mary's will take a little bit of a drop. But when you look at San Diego and you look at San Francisco and you look at UOP, there's just more depth to this league. So I think this development of this team, and it's hard to say what's going to go forward. If you could have Nick the first 9 games, yeah, you have a better situation for yourselves in terms of maybe winning a couple of those road games. But I think more than anything, it's how they play, making sure they're competitive games, the development of new and young players, and getting themselves ready for the WCC and ready for the WCC tournament. we understand that Gonzaga, is they're the prohibitive favorite in everything. Not only to win the conference, but to win the tournament. But BYU's had success against them. But I like the league being better this year. I think it'll have a higher RPI. I think the preseason overall in the league will be better because there's more depth to this conference than there has been in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, St. Mary's is actually going to leave the state in non-conference, which is like the huge news for them. Yeah, it's about time, right? How much do personal issues affect a player on the court in your experience as a coach? Nick went through some hard things publicly, dropped out right before the season so he could figure those out. The hope is that he's in a good place, but how much do those affect a guy on the court, in your opinion?
I have a lot of respect for Nick. I'll share with you my opinion. And when this was all kind of unfolding, I wasn't sure that it was the best thing for him to come back, to be honest with you. And just because that you live in a community, and it doesn't matter what university community you're in, everything's really transparent with social media and everything going on. And Nick participated in that. And I thought maybe Nick would be better off going and getting a fresh start and not having to kind of be dealing with the pressures and all the chitter and chat and everything that's going to be out there. But as I've watched him and I've listened to him and I've seen his comments, there's just a sense to me that him staying here was exactly the right thing for him to do. And I think everything is about how you approach it and the attitude you take. And I see Nick taking the attitude that, listen, I made some mistakes. I'm going to move forward. I mean, that's the life. We all make mistakes in life. There's, regardless of what anybody says, we make them personally, we make them professionally. We all make mistakes, and that's not the problem. The problem is how you handle them, what you do with them. And I think he's taken a step forward. I think he realizes that, I've made mistakes. I'm going to go forward, and I'm going to help this basketball team. And I don't see anything, any of his language, anything I've read that is selfish or is all about him. I just don't see that. And I'm not suggesting it was before, but I see a really humble young man that has gone through some tough things. And I think we need to be really, really careful as a fan base or as one that roots against BYU to judge young people when we all have things that we feel like we could have probably been a little bit better at. And we live in a society where we tend to judge a great deal. And I just think that's the wrong approach to this. And I think Nick's prepared for whatever he has to deal with, and I think there's a maturity about him. And everything that I see and hear, I feel like he's ready for this emotionally. And I was most concerned about him coming back here 6, 7, 8 months ago. I thought that may not be the best thing, but everything I've seen is that it is, and that has nothing to do with winning and losing games. I think it's the best thing for him personally, and that's the most important thing.
Outstanding commentary on the Nick Emery situation. He's reinstated with BYU basketball. We'll finish with this, Coach. We all know that Nick can fill it up and he can score the basketball. I feel like he is a very underrated defensive player because we focus so much on his offense. You talk about him helping the program. Where do you think he will help BYU basketball the most in terms of on-the-court skills?
I completely agree with you. He is a much, much improved defender. He's got great lateral quickness. He's athletic. He has a good vertical. I mean, he's a sinewy, he's not a big, thick guy, but he is much stronger, and I know that he's prepared himself in the weight room. I think his ability to defend is going to be really, really important to this team, and certainly he has the opportunity to make baskets. But he's also another guy that can attack and break people down off the dribble and help others get shots. I think there's going to be a peace and a calm. I'm not saying there won't be good and bad days, but I think there's going to be a maturity here that both ends of the floor that he's going to really contribute. He'll be a great attribute to this team, and I see him having a great year, to be honest with you.
Coach, great to catch up with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, take care, guys. Have a good week.